You can't make use of something if you don't believe it exists. A person could have been bequeathed a bank account with $1 billion, but if they don't believe that it exists, then they cannot make use of it and will remain poor and struggling even when practically infinite resources are available to them. The same is true if they believe that it might exist, but that somehow they're doing something wrong if they access it. If the person is afraid to use it for some reason, then it might as well not exist for that person. Can you imagine that? Fear stopping someone from accessing what is rightfully theirs. Of course we can, because it happens every day in various circumstances with various people. Well, what about the person who is afraid to touch it because if they do, they might lose their Medicare or Social Security benefits? It does not occur to them that they do not need either if they simply start using the account. The deliverance which is found in Jesus Christ has already been accomplished. Every single human being is already one with him through his birth, death, burial, and resurrection. Every single human being has the capacity to disengage from, to detach from their own dysfunctional human survival responses, and to submit to and cooperate with the Spirit of Christ already. All that person needs to do is believe that this capacity exists in some way and make use of it. And therein lies the difficulty, because even those who profess to believe in Jesus don't actually believe this capacity exists, or they're too afraid to use it for whatever reason, either because of the guilt or shame they feel or the attachments they have to whatever. They're afraid of opening their eyes and stepping into the light, the experience of God acting and speaking through you because they're ashamed of the things they've done, or because they don't want to give up the things they're doing or the things they possess or who they believe themselves to be. And so, like the man who escapes the cave in Plato's allegory, they are too few and too far between who know about it and make use of it. And frequently they only just stumble into this treasure which is already there without really understanding it or interpreting it from a completely different worldview, but still able to make use of it because it does in fact exist. And it has their name on it, just like it has the name of every human being on it. Because Jesus Christ is the exchange and reconciliation for the errors of all those who know about him and it, and the rest of the world as well. God doesn't play favorites, and if the non-Christian stumbles into it and learns to function within him, effectively becoming a disciple without understanding that he is, when the Christian does not or refuses to, he's perfectly willing to stick a wedding garment on the non-Christian and welcome him in, even while wondering what's keeping the Christian from doing the same when he was specifically invited. Not that God doesn't know already, but you get the point. Contrary to current Christian thinking, I'm pretty sure there are more non-Christians attached to the head as members of the body than anyone realizes, and more Christians than these that keep themselves amputated because of their fear, guilt, shame, and the teachings which encourage such obstacles. This deliverance from our common dysfunction is available to the entire world, and not just those who profess a certain doctrine and run through the rituals. But you have to make use of it in order for it to do anything. And in order to make use of it, you have to know it exists and not be afraid to use it. When I was younger and attending a Bible church, and later an evangelical missionary Bible school, it was repeatedly impressed upon me how much the world and non-Christians hated and rejected Jesus Christ. How much Christians would be persecuted because they believed in Jesus. And what we needed to do was teach them about Jesus and the gospel, giving them as much of the written word of God as possible. But as I've gotten older and experienced things outside of that bubble, I have found something very, very different to be the truth. What I have found is that most people outside of that church background already know at least the basics of what Jesus taught. Most people, whether they are Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, or even humanist atheists, at the very least have a respect for Jesus Christ himself and what he actually taught in the Gospels. And most of those who are educated in any way have a decent grasp on what he said, even if they've never set foot in a Sunday school, a church, or a Bible study. What Jesus taught, and he himself, has been spread so far and so wide, and is so much a part of our international cultural heritage, that it is truly difficult to escape some understanding of it and him within the civilized world. And the irony is, this is why many who know what Jesus taught do not choose to become Christians. Watching the news, reading what is being taught and promulgated in Jesus' name, sometimes I feel dumbstruck at the audacity. I feel even more shame that I was a part of it once upon a time. There is a bumper sticker which reads, "Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven." And this is the philosophical excuse many use for outright disobeying and even contradicting what Jesus taught. They do not seek to walk as he walked or live as he taught because it's too hard. They do not seek to love their neighbors, much less their enemies. They judge, they keep account of perceived wrongs, they do not forgive, they condemn without mercy, all while singing songs which praise his name and performing ceremony, liturgy, ordinance, or sacrament. They do all of this and more, verbally and sometimes even physically attacking the vulnerable and defenseless, the poor, the outcast, the foreigner, orphans, and so on, because it is politically acceptable to do so. They totally ignore what Jesus said in that, "Inasmuch as you did this to the least of these my brothers, you did this to me," and expect total absolution for such things because they believe in Jesus. Such things were not the case among the Christianoi of the 1st and 2nd century. They were explicit in that someone who is found not living as he taught was not recognized as one of them, no matter what doctrine they professed to teach. John, too, in his first epistle was explicit when he wrote that someone who claimed to make their home in him was obligated to walk as he walked. They would have been horrified at the idea that someone could have the gall to call themselves by his name and then belittle his teaching as too weak. They would have put that person outside of their group of Christians until they came to their senses. Most of the non-Christian world doesn't have a problem with Jesus himself like I was taught. They have a real problem with those who claim to speak in his name, not following him themselves and claiming to get away with it. Any genuine, careful reading of the New Testament will show that he has a real problem with it too.